Good morning. It is Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. With us now, entrepreneur, motivator, very successful businessman, family man, Treasure Valley treasure, the owner of Newsletter Pro, Sean Buck. Sean, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
You know, Sean, I had a chance to see you in person and talk about you've always been a grinder. You've always been someone that has made something out of nothing. For people that aren't familiar with your story, it's the first of the year. We're seeking to inspire, to motivate. You've had some humble origins, and you didn't let that get in the way. You looked at challenges as opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can share a little bit of that backstory with your listeners if you think that makes sense. But yeah, so I mean, I'm just like everybody else, really. I mean, like I grew up really poor in the Bay Area. Had a kid really, really young. At 16 years old, I became a dad. And unlike a lot of teenage dads, I made the decision to be involved. And actually, by the time my son was 3, I was raising him by myself. So I had to figure life out really, really fast. And I pretty much knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so, I kicked into doing that, into being an entrepreneur, into starting businesses. And I spent most of my 20s just figuring out what I wanted to be when I was big, jumping from business to business, buying and selling companies, and moved here to the Treasure Valley, a dozen years ago or so, and started a company or two here. But the main one I've owned here is called Newsletter Pro. We're over on the Emerald 5 Mile area is kind of where we're at. And I've got 60 employees here, give or take. We're sending out about 6 or 7 million print newsletters from our offices. So we have a production facility here. We send out many more email newsletters. I've been one of the fastest growing companies according to Inc. magazine for the last 3 years, one of the best places to work in Idaho. So yeah, I mean, I took a very, very hard go in life, just decided to see what we could make happen. I mean, we all have a hard luck story, all have hard times, and it's just what do we do next is, I guess, really what makes the difference, right?
Yeah, but Sean, I'm a whiner. I'm still whining about things that happened to me back in '93. I'm amazed at what you've done at such a young age, being a father, raising your child on your own, and then instead of getting a 9-to-5 job like most of us, you created your own job. And we watched the Shark Tank, we watched The Profit, we watch your stuff on YouTube, but there's a lot of risk involved, a lot of insecurity. How did you know that was the way at such a young age?
Well, for me, it was just more about, wanting to blaze my own trail, right? Knowing that if I work for one person, right? So I did have a job for a little while working for AT&T when they were selling cell phones for them when I was about 19 years old or so. And, at that point I had one check, one person who paid me money every single pay period, right? And so if that one person ever stopped paying me money, I realized that I would then be unemployed and broke really fast, right? Savings would burn through and I wouldn't have anything. But then I figured out that if I started my own company, right now we have roughly 500 clients, which means I kind of have 500 bosses. But that also means I get 500 different paychecks. So if one person leaves, it's really not that big of a deal. I mean, it sucks. We don't want to lose any of our clients, but if one person goes, it's no big deal. And so I actually felt it was less risky doing it this way and having, 500 bosses as opposed to having one boss who could let me go at any point in time, and then I'm just out of luck, right?
Look, I've lived that, Sean, and perhaps I'll be living that again here on KIDO Talk Radio. But the idea of you live it. You've created something, and you continue to create stuff. And again, I marvel at your story of how you would find an opening in a market as a young man. You'd train yourself to do it, and then sooner or later you would sell it for a profit, then move on to your next endeavor. Where does that come from?
Well, so for that, what was happening is I'm pretty analytical and I'm introspective, right? So I want to look in. I take a hard look at myself every year. And what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? How can I be, not only a better entrepreneur, but how can I be a better husband? How can I be a better dad? Right? Those are all things that I want to look into. And so when I was building these businesses, I would look at the businesses the same way, and I'd say, okay, what do I like? What don't I like? Is this something I can affect change on? Because sometimes you can't. Like that's just, for example, one company that I started here in the Treasure Valley. It's called Dry Cleaning Butler, and I don't own it anymore. I haven't owned it for a long time. But that company, its primary form of marketing was door-to-door. And so there may be people listening who, myself or my wife or one of my employees, knocked on your door to give you a purple bag to offer free pickup and delivery of your dry cleaning, right? That is because you have to have a lot of customers in a really small area. At least at the time, that was the only way to go do it, right? In mass, and to get enough people to make a route work. So the thing is, although I learned a lot going door to door, I don't enjoy doing it. So I would be introspective. I'd be like, hey, this isn't what I want to do. And I'd make a list of the things I liked about this company and the things I didn't like. And then when I sold it, I would go to get the next business, and I would try to get, more things that I liked than I didn't like about the business, right? And that was kind of this evolution of learning what I wanted and what I didn't want by owning different companies.
Well, what about the scary part about this? You knock door to door, you're doing grassroots with you and your wife and your friends. You have that emotional attachment to that business. And then do you buy an existing business and increase it, or do you start from scratch?
Yeah, I think it depends on experience level, right? And so for me, I did a little bit of both. Sometimes especially early on, I bought a couple of franchises. That way I could see a proven model. I could get some experience under my belt. I think that's a good way to go if you don't have a lot of business experience, but, because that gives you some support. It's not necessarily the most profitable way to go a lot of times because you've got to pay up those royalties to the franchisor, but it can be a very, very good way to go if you find the right franchise that offers the right support. Right now, I'm actually acquiring a company that will close on February 1st out of California, and they're an established business that we're going to grow. And so that is one of those things where now at this point I definitely feel I have enough experience, and I've done it a time or two before where I can acquire a company. For the Newsletter Pro, there was only one option. There was people back in 2011 thought that, we wouldn't be having direct mail anymore. There wouldn't be print. It would all die and go away. And that fortunately has not happened. But yeah, so back when I started that, the only option was to start it. There really wasn't another company doing what we did or what we do. And so, I think it just depends on your stage of business and depending on what your idea is, right?
Sean Buck joining us, Newsletter Pro, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go back to the idea of print being dead. People say that print is dead, radio is dead, and it's digital this and a zip and a zap. But really, the old ways, to me, are still the best ways.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Very few media ever dies, right? So TV was supposed to kill radio. That was what everyone was saying back in, the 40s, right? 50s. Radio's dead. I listened to the radio on the way into work this morning, and as I do many mornings. It seems to still be alive and kicking here in 2018, or 2019 now. Look at that. So, very, very rarely does any media die. If any media was going to die, it's going to be Yellow Pages. But I know people who are profitably using the Yellow Pages right now, companies who have ads in the Yellow Pages and are turning a profit on those ads. It just so rarely happens that a media completely disappears. As far as direct mail goes, I do agree that there are a lot of benefits to having the stuff that's proven, right? A lot of this stuff out here, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or, a lot of this stuff is not proven marketing, right? We don't know how well it works. We don't know what the click fraud rates are. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't use some of that stuff. You just got to be smart about how you use it. And I think that's where most people make the mistake is they're not smart. They don't understand how their business gets leads, converts those leads and gets them into customers. And because they don't understand that, they use the various different medias in an incorrect way. And then that's where they get that some marketing doesn't work, whether it's old school marketing like direct mail and radio, or whether it's new school marketing like Facebook and Instagram ads, right? It's more about the entrepreneur using it incorrectly, less about the media doesn't work. But that's where that comes from, is that an entrepreneur uses it wrong and then everyone says it's dead, right?
Well, Sean, it comes down to belief, and I think it's the passion for your product. Let me hit you with the tough questions here on KIDO Talk Radio. Sean Buck joining us from Newsletter Pro, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. We are so inundated. We just got through the politics, and I've got politician this, and they're going to, pave the sidewalks, and someone's going to shovel my snow. So making direct mail work when we seemingly are inundated by it. You have made a great living on it. You have a successful company. Inc. magazine loves you. How does direct mail work? I guess I could say, you could ask me, how does radio work? But again, you have that perception. How do you get past that?
Well, look, I think that when you think about the different types of media, right? So let's take a Facebook ad and we'll compare it to direct mail, right? So on a Facebook ad, I've got to scroll, right? I'm scrolling. I see the ad, and I've got to actually be willing to stop and engage with said ad. The problem is I got 97 other things that are drawing at my attention at that point in time, right? So there's other posts from actually people I want to see, my friends and family and stuff like that, right? I might have an instant message come in. I could see a new email pop up in my inbox. Like, you're in a world where you're competing with so much noise, right? There's so much noise going on social media. In direct mail in your mailbox, when you're paying attention to my ad, yeah, I'm sure, I guess one of the kids could come by or whatever, but more or less you're paying attention to my ad. There's a lot less things that are going to pull you away and distract you. It's the same thing when I'm in the car listening to the radio, right? So I'm in the car, I'm listening to the radio, and we're listening to your show, and then an ad comes on, and guess what? I'm listening to the ad while I'm there. You're getting some one-on-one time with me. See, this one-on-one time, that is some of the most valuable time in the world for a business to have with a prospect or with a customer, right? This little bit of interaction. I mean, it is so valuable. But when you put up an ad up on Facebook, I mean, you can just look at the numbers, right? So many people scroll past the ad and never, ever, ever see it. We do some Facebook advertising, and I can look at the numbers. 100,000 people see the ad, so I can get a couple hundred people maybe to engage with the ad, right? I mean,
sure.
So it's just you're just talking about apples and oranges almost, because you're talking about, like, do I want to have a one-on-one conversation, or do I want to kind of interrupt someone as they're walking down, the sidewalk, right? Do I want to try to stop them and get their attention there, or do I want to just have and they could easily just keep walk into the next store, right? So you're looking at very different. I guess maybe here's the best way to maybe describe it, okay, for someone who's listening, who's an entrepreneur, right, who has a business or is thinking about starting one. You need to figure out, how do you generate leads and how do you convert them? So you really have like three types of leads, right? Cold leads, warm leads, and then your referrals, right? And so cold leads, those are the hardest, and that's what Facebook does, right? Facebook takes cold leads and you generate. You're going to try to turn those people into a sale of some kind, right? Well, there's a lot of education that has to happen for that sale to come to fruition, especially if you're selling anything complicated. A warm lead is someone who's already familiar with you. They know you, whether they've seen you, whether they've driven past your store a whole bunch of times, right? They're much more warm. They're more inclined to do business with you, right? Okay. And so if you run a warm lead, if you work off warm leads, people who are more familiar with who you are, and work off of those leads right there, right? They're easier to convert. But if you try to run Facebook traffic, cold lead generation traffic, into a warm lead generation process, it's not going to work. Because the cold leads have to be warmed up first, right? You can't take a cold lead and just drop it into and start talking to them like they know who you are. You have to educate them on who you are first. So do you see how if we use the wrong media and we drop it into we drop it into the wrong education bucket to get the prospect to convert, you lose them, right? And so that's what's going on. So cold leads have to go through an education process to warm them up and then become clients, right? Warm leads are already warm. Now we got to just take them into becoming clients, right? And a referral is super hot, and we just need to convert those folks. And so you have to, when you're running the traffic, you have to treat the traffic differently. That's where the problem's coming in, right? That's the challenge. If I'm a local business running a radio ad and I'm a known entity, right, in the community, that I'm much more warm. That's
Right.
a much more of a warm traffic sale because I have some brand recognition. If I'm a brand new company running radio ads, I'm going to have to run radio ads for a longer period of time because I have to build that recognition, that name brand recognition with the listeners in that, on that station. And so you have to consider what it is that you're, where you're getting your traffic, what the traffic is designed to do, who the people are that you're targeting, right? You have to consider all those factors. And if you don't, then you buy the wrong media and it doesn't work. It really was your fault, the entrepreneur, not the media's fault.
Sean Buck, hang on. More coming up with Sean next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Sean Buck joining us from Newsletter Pro, and obviously you just put on a clinic there. Now, you run mastermind sessions. You do this. You're giving us your knowledge here for free. We appreciate that, but where did you get all this stuff? I mean, you're talking about cold leads, hot leads. You've educated yourself. You're a self-made guy. You've taken a venue where people thought no one was interested in it. Inc. Magazine and others have recognized you as the place to be. Newsletter Pro. Is this on-the-job training? How did you come up with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I read a lot of books. I follow people who are, doing stuff that's just, bigger, better, badder things, right? And so who's out there crushing it that I can follow and pay attention to and try to learn something from what they're doing? Who can I go hang out with? Who are other entrepreneurs I can go hang out with and meet up with that are actually like successful, that are actually, ideally speaking, I'd love to go hang out with some guys running $100 million companies, that would be awesome, right? Because how much could I learn by just sitting there listening, not even talking, just listening to what they have to say? But for me, it started when I found out I was going to be a dad at 16, which is we talked about earlier. One of the first things I did was I went to Barnes & Noble. And I got a big, huge stack of books, literally all these business books I thought were interesting. I wanted to buy all of them, but I was currently working at Chuck E. Cheese making $4.25 an hour, and I couldn't afford most of those books. So I, 16 years old, I just didn't have any money. And so I went through and I sat there and kind of used Barnes & Noble as a library for a while, and just read books while I was sitting there. And I'd buy one or two every now and again, when I could afford it, and one that was just really good that I had to reference back to or whatever. But yeah, so I started with that kind of education, with doing a lot of reading. There was absolutely some on-the-job training and some mistakes there. One of the things the one big mistake I see entrepreneurs make is they try to go it solo, right? So they think, well, I'm the entrepreneur, I got to know everything, I got to do everything. But one of the biggest components to my success is that I got out and started doing I started going to various events and meeting other entrepreneurs and doing masterminds, which is the idea where a group of entrepreneurs get together and kind of help each other on their businesses, right? I started doing some masterminds. I started making friendships with people who were doing well. And then that allowed me to cut a lot of learning curve, because when I got stuck on something, I could make a phone call or send a text message or send an email. In fact, I just did it yesterday to one of my buddies who is like the guy for list purchasing in the country. So if you're a big corporation and you want to do a big direct mail campaign, there's a strong chance you're going to use my buddy Craig to find the list, get the data, that matches all your demographics so you can send out those million pieces or whatnot. Like, that's what this guy does. He's top of his game. And so, I have to get this, I'm buying this company and they've got this list, but some of the data is not good. And so I didn't know exactly where to go. I had a couple ideas of where to go to get, that data fixed, but I knew Craig would know. And so I sent Craig a text. I'm like, hey man, how's it going? How do I get this fixed? And he's like, okay, you're going to go to this company. It's going to cost $850, and here's the link to go do it. So some of it's just old-fashioned getting to know other people, making friendships, helping them first, and then when I need help, it's really easy to make a phone call or send a text message and get the help I need. And so I think that from learning it all, it was just a lot of time. I've been at it for 23 years now. I'm 39, so. I've been at it for a little while, and it's like anything else, it takes time.
More coming up with Sean Buck, Traffic and Weather Together, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Miller in the morning, Sean Buck joining us, Newsletter Pro. So tell us about the growth of your company. And again, I call you and a few others around here, the Treasure Valley, your hidden secrets, because the national publications know all about you. You're going across the country, helping businesses, helping individuals live that dream, but you pretty much live a quiet life here. There is kind of a, I don't know what you want to call it, underground entrepreneurial vibe here with folks under 40 in the Treasure Valley.
Yeah, there is, and that seems to be growing a lot, which is nice, and it's good for our economy. About the growth. So I started this company part-time in 2011, and it was just me, and because I had to sell that dry cleaning business that I mentioned earlier that we owned.
Now, remember, that was through the recession and everything else. 2011 was a very different world than what we live in today.
It is, yes, and I watched all of my friends who were starting businesses or recently started business. I watched all of them start social media companies or website development companies or something along those lines, and we had a lot of success with a physical newsletter. It was just really a pain in the butt to do. And so I was like, you know what, if this is this hard for me, but it works, I bet there are other people who this would work for and would like us to do all the work. And that's kind of how the company got off the ground. But the first year, we didn't light the world on fire. I was doing it very part-time. We did a little over $100,000 in sales in 2011. And of course, sales don't equal profit, so we didn't make any money. And that was the start. And then after another year or so, I started, 2012 was my first full-time year in the business. And it took me about 6 months to really figure out how to get the marketing dialed in. But once we got the marketing dialed in, the second half of the year, so it was about September of 2012, we had the marketing dialed in. By the end of the year, we had doubled in size. So at that point, we were doing I'd already grown it from about $100,000 a year to $400,000 a year, and then we went from $400,000 to $800,000 in 4 months. And so we just started seeing this crazy growth, and within our first 3 full years in business, we were doing a couple $1 million and had grown 2,975% over those 3 years, and then have just continued to grow quite rapidly over the last number of years. Like this year, our company will probably do in the $16-17 million or something like that in sales is roughly what we'll end up doing. And we just continue to grow, and our secret to that really is good marketing on the front end to bring them in, but then it's keeping the customers. We do everything we can to give an amazing experience and amazing results for the clients. Even if that means hey, this month we lost, money on XYZ client, let's say, right? It doesn't matter. We give them the great results and experience, and they stay. Our average customer stays for 4 years. And so when they're staying that long with us, it allows you to grow really, really fast because you're not having to replace quite as many people, all the time, right?
More coming up with Sean Buck next. Kevin Miller, you're listening to 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Our great friend Sean Buck joining us from Newsletter Pro. Now, in the last segment, you were talking about going from 100,000 to 400, and then 400 to 800,000 in gross sales in 4 months. Yeah. You must have found the special sauce.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. One of the biggest things that happened there was that, and this is something that a tactic anyone can use, is that we found another business. We found another company who already had a lot of our clients, people who would be perfect fits for us, right? And lucky for me, they actually had a newsletter that they were sending out, so that made it really, really easy. But so I went in and I got to know. It took me a couple of months to really get to know these people, and they agreed to interview me, kind of like this call here. But they agreed to interview me, and I just dissected, how to create a newsletter for people, and with the idea, my theory on that was, because people are probably sitting there thinking, Sean, why would you teach everyone how to create newsletters? Isn't that what you do? And my theory on that is yeah, totally, and that is what I do. And some people do take my information and go out and create their own newsletter, and I'm totally happy for them to go do that. But most people look at it and go, man, that's a lot of work. I'm just going to pay you guys to go do it. So we give a lot of our secrets away for free, and then when people see how much work it is, they just ask us to do it for them. But so I did this whole training on how to do that for them. And at that point, I was the only salesperson. We had maybe 5 employees or 4 employees, something like that. And I was 5 employees. Yeah, and so I was the only salesperson. But luckily, because I found this business who had a bunch of our ideal clients, I actually sat on the phone, and no over-exaggeration here, for 2.5 months for I was scheduled out for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 2.5 months. My calendar was filled from that one interview. And the only time I got a break or whatnot was if someone didn't show up. So like if someone didn't show up on a day, I was like, oh my goodness, thank you, Jesus, because I could have an hour not to talk,
Sure.
And so, which isn't my normal reaction when someone doesn't show up to a sales call now. I'm like, man, that sucks. But yeah, that was the process. And so, think about it for your business. Like, what other company that's not a competitor has your clients? So if you're a law firm right now, maybe it's a chiropractor or vice versa, right? Because you want those accident injury people. Like, who has them? Go build that relationship. Help them help their clients, and watch a ton of business come back your way.
Sean Buck joining us, Newsletter Pro, a local company here in the Treasure Valley, entrepreneur, family man. Now, Sean, on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning, you're talking all business, but how do you balance that with your family? I mean, we're all talking about, look, I want to be the next this, that, and the other, but realistically, as you learned early on in life, family comes first.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier in the show that when I was in my 20s and I was kind of buying and selling companies trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I was big, that I would make a list of things I don't, I would make a list of things I didn't like, right? And actually, I make this list every year, and if anyone's listening that doesn't make this list, they should, even if they're listening and they're not entrepreneurs. So I make a list of stuff I don't want to do list, right? And unfortunately, I can't just cross everything off the list all at once, right? But I take a look at this list every year, and I say, okay, well, where can I make adjustments or tweaks to my life to stop doing these things I don't want to do? Like, life's way too short for me to do a whole bunch of stuff I don't enjoy doing. Everyone has to do some stuff, right? But sometimes there's things that you're doing them because you've always done them, and it's just not necessary anymore, right? So I would make that list, and one of the things I decided early on was that I didn't want a 7-day-a-week business. I had 7-day-a-week businesses, but I wanted the weekends for my family. I wanted the evenings for my family. I didn't want to get the Sunday afternoon call. Literally, I can remember one time I owned a couple of restaurants, and I got the Sunday afternoon call that the soda machines were down at one of the restaurants, and it was going to cost us a fortune. I'm sitting in the movies with my wife watching the movie, but I had to get up and leave the movie to go fix the soda machine because no one could figure out how to fix it. And I'm like, I never ever want to do this again, And so I make these kinds of lists of things I don't want to do anymore, and then I do my best throughout the year to get rid of as many of those things as I possibly can. Again, I've never been able to get rid of all of them. There's things that have been on that list for years because it's just something I have to do. I'm the guy to do that, for whatever reason. But I do everything I can. Now, I do not believe there's such a thing. If you really want to get ahead, there's not such a thing as work-life balance, right? But you do have to, because it's never going to be in perfect balance. Something's always going to be taking priority. But you do have to figure out how to have some balance, and you can't have it always be work or always be play. Otherwise, you'll just never get ahead. So our balance kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, right? And there are times where I have to work a lot more, and I sit down with the kids and my wife, and I say, hey, I'll let you know for the next 3 months it's going to be really hard. There's a lot going on, and I explain it to them, and I let them know that I try to give them something to look forward to, maybe a vacation a few months after that or something, right? And then I go and I just communicate with them and go work hard. But then when it's playtime, when it's time to not work as hard, so for example, we're just getting past the Christmas season and stuff, and I took about 14 days off. Mainly spent the time with the kids, but also my wife and I flew out and went to Las Vegas for New Year's Eve and, danced at a club most of the night and had a great time. And, so I try to put, for me, I try to put special, memories in place for my kids. I try to do things that will, get them to, outside the normal grind, some experience they'll remember. That tends to be my strategy. And then I just communicate a lot with them if it's going to be a hard period of time.
Sean, how is this area for entrepreneurs? Are we entrepreneur friendly here?
Yeah, this area is really good. I mean, to be honest with you, the income taxes are a little bit high. If you look at some of our neighboring states, even Utah, it's a couple points less. But by and large, especially a guy coming from the Bay Area, this is a night and day difference. This is an amazing place. It's an amazing place in general. It's an amazing place to raise a family. It's an amazing place to do business. We have talked a couple of times, if we ever sell and start over, should we go to Texas or somewhere that has, no income tax? But we just love it here so much. I highly doubt we would ever do that, even to save the money. So,
Sean Buck joining us, Newsletter Pro, newsletterpro.com. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. What's your advice to people that yearn to live the dream and they get inspired by hearing what you have to say? What's the number one thing you can share with them?
So just starting out and they want to go live the dream?
Yes, they want to be, because when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a boss. You're your own boss, right, Sean?
Yeah, not entirely. You actually end up with a lot of bosses. Every employee, every customer, ends up to some extent having some say in what it is you do and how you do it. But here's what I tell you: if you are so inclined and capable of doing it, it is absolutely amazing. You should do it. The benefits outweigh the risks. Get help. Get good advisors. And then when you are successful, and as you're becoming successful, not just once you arrive, figure out what you can do to help others, right? You don't need to keep all the marbles. I tell my team all the time, I'm not here to keep every single marble that comes into this business, right? We want to provide great benefits. We want to provide a great, work schedule, good pay, great pay. I mean, we want to provide, we want to take care of those who are taking care of us. And so don't, if you're going to do it, go in and do it right. Go in and look at the things that you don't like about the company you work for now or companies you worked for in the past. Figure out what those things are and do the opposite of those. Treat people like people, whether they're customers, prospects, or employees. It doesn't matter. And I'm telling you, if you just take care of everybody else around you, you will be taken care of. Don't be dumb. Don't be dumb about things, right? You have to make sometimes hard decisions. And sometimes you do have to say no, and that's okay. But don't fall in the trap of, man, I'm super successful and jump into the big ego and no one can do it as good as me, because that's just not true at all. And all these other things that I watch new entrepreneurs fall into. I take a lot of comfort in this concept, which is that every problem is a leadership problem. So that means when something goes wrong in my company, you know whose fault it is? It's my fault. Because obviously I didn't provide the right system, process, leadership, guidance, whatever it was. Short of someone coming in and stealing, that's their fault, because I didn't ask them to go steal, right? But if we're just talking about a breakdown in the system here, or we're talking about a breakdown in the process, that is not my employee's fault. That's my fault. Every problem's a leadership problem. And the good news about every problem being a leadership problem means I can fix those problems, because they're my problems. Right? I can't fix other people's problems.
Sure.
But I can fix my own. So go in, do the right thing, do the thing that do the thing you know is right, even if it's not always the most profitable thing to do, right? Go in, help others, and study. Man, you gotta study, you gotta read, you've gotta follow other people who are successful and crushing it, and figure out what they're doing. Constantly be learning.
And
so those are tips.
Sorry, Sean, more coming up with Sean Buck. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller, good morning. Kevin Miller in the morning here. Our great friend Sean Buck joining us from the Newsletter Pro. Just talking about how to make it in today's world. Sean, one of the fascinating things is you've co-written a book. You've written a book, probably written several books. You've co-written a book with the guru, Dan Kennedy, about just how to keep customers. I think even if you're not in sales, even if you're not an entrepreneur, everybody wants to keep customers or friends. What are some of your thoughts that you put into print?
Yeah, so a couple of things, right? So too many people get hyper-focused on they get hyper-focused on the one situation and not the long term, right? Being in business or really just in general life is a long-term game, right? It's not about get the most out of today. And so many people are living for today when a small sacrifice for today would make a huge impact on tomorrow. I mean, if I know on your station, Dave Ramsey is plays on your station, and that's basically a lot of what he preaches, right? Sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. But I'm telling you, like that is the case, and I'll give you an example. So I got this phone call from a guy I'd sold a company to, and this was years and years and years ago. And he calls me up, and it was one of the biggest customers was getting ready to leave. And he says, yeah, here's the situation. Here's, he tells me this customer says that we messed up over here, and he's upset, and he wants us to fix it, but we absolutely didn't mess up. And I'm like, well, what's it going to cost to fix it? And he's like, $60. But this guy is spending like $1,000 a month with this company. And I said, well, did you just tell him, okay, I'll pay the $60? And he's like, no, I told him it wasn't our fault. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, I was hoping you could call him because he said he's canceled. He's not going to use our service again. I'm like, well, one, I'm not calling him, but two, that's insanity. Like, take care of the customer. I don't care if it was the customer's fault, right? And so, what we talk about is that we are living in an age right now where people have so many choices, right? I can go to the internet and find anything I want. I don't have to just do business with the local person here. I can have it shipped into me. And if I do even want to do business with a local person, there's 10 of them to help me out, right? There's 10 different companies, 12, 15 companies I can go to. So that means that the way you treat those customers must be on point. Now, the second point to this is you've got to communicate with them. It is not their job, the customer's job, to know who you are, what you do, and that you're still in business. It is your job to remind them. And so you have to communicate with them, but you have to communicate with them stuff that is of value to them, not of value to you. So most businesses run their business where all they do, all the communication is either buy my stuff or pay me money, right? Pay me money because you owe me a bill, or buy my stuff. That's the only communication. Well, guess what? No wonder people ignore you. Like, could you imagine if every time one of your relatives called you, and I have had this experience, it really sucks, so if you haven't, take my word for it, where every time their number shows up on your caller ID, you're getting hit up for a loan that's never going to get repaid, or you're getting asked for a favor, right? Who wants that person in their life? I surely don't, and most consumers don't either. But that's how businesses operate, right? All they do, hey, Kevin, can you buy my stuff? I got some really good stuff. And by the way, now can you pay your bill? Like, who wants that? So communicate with them on stuff that's going to benefit them, that's going to help them, that's going to educate them, that's going to make their life easier or better or more entertained, right? So keep communication going. Obviously do what you say you're going to do. I watch this all the time. Companies just literally do not hold up their end of the bargain. And usually the problem is a systems and process problem, right? I know that's boring stuff, but if you want a big company or if you want a company that's very profitable, you have to have good systems and processes in place so that you can make sure that you deliver on everything it is that you promise. Like, those three things will absolutely, we could go more in depth, but those three things will absolutely change a company if you'll actually focus on them, implement them, work at them.
More coming up with Sean Buck. First, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And once again, back with Sean Buck, Kevin Miller here, Sean with Newsletter Pro. One thing that I love about you is a very simple recipe for success, and it means it could be just as simple as staying over like an extra 30 or 40 minutes when most businesses close. Can you elaborate on that a little? Yeah, sure.
So look, it's right now. We live in a world where if you want, like, for example, more referrals and you want more loyal clients, you have to give them something to talk about, right? You have to create that experience that they want to go share on Facebook, they want to go tell their friends about, and that's one great way to get in new referrals. So, yeah, let's say that you've got some client who, for whatever reason, they've got something that's really important to them, and you need to stay open late. I'll give you an example. My very first real business, right? Like the very first one that I owned that wasn't like selling pagers to my friends in high school. It was a restaurant, and we get this phone call from this woman who's coming in, who's saying that her husband just got out of the hospital, and she said she'd give him anything he wanted, and what he wanted was one of our items on our menu. I don't remember which one now. And she says, but I know you guys close in 5 minutes. And we said, when are you going to be here? And she says, it's going to take me 20 minutes to get here. We will have it ready for you when you get here. And that's exactly what we did. We stayed open. We closed to everyone else. We told her to knock, but she came in, and we didn't even charge her. We had already closed out the registers. We gave her the food, right? But those people, I then got to meet the husband like 2 weeks later when he came in and thanked me for staying open for them and taking care of them, right? It's the golden rule, man. Just do unto others as you want done unto you, right? Like, just help people. I'm telling you, I know that people want to make it more complicated than that. It doesn't have to be. You can, if you want to make it more complicated, just help others. Take care of people, and they will take care of you.
Sean, we've got about 2 minutes left now. Not only are you head of the Newsletter Pro and doing other things, but you're doing your own mastermind stuff. Now, what is that like, going from an attendee to leading the crew?
Yeah, so a mastermind is a fun, in my opinion, it's fun. But it's where a bunch of entrepreneurs get together. We have a number of them who fly in to Boise 3 times a year, sit in my conference room, and we literally just dive deep on their problems. And how can we help them? Where are they getting stuck? And I'm telling you, it's so much easier to just take someone else's experience, right? Someone say, okay, you've been here before. How do we solve this? That is a much easier path to solving the problem than trying to do trial and error. And so I love it. I've hadn't done one in many, many years, just because we'd been so busy growing so much that I had to keep all my focus on the company. And now, as I've developed out my management team more, I get to go do more of the things I love doing. And that's one of the things I love doing is talking business, helping entrepreneurs. Obviously, I definitely prefer when people actually do something with the talk and the advice, but I do it for sport. It's fun for me. So yeah, I love leading the group and helping these guys and seeing their wins and then helping them through the hard times when those come up. And so yeah, and then we always get to go do something fun. So the last group, I took them to a Boise State game. We got sideline passes and went down on the sideline. I mean, we had a great time, and many of them were college football fans, but everyone thought it was fun to watch the game and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, we try to have a little work, little play in there as well, but we have a lot of fun with it.
Sean, if people want to get a hold of you, what can they do?
Probably the easiest way to do that is just go to newsletterpro.com, and they can there's contact us page and all sorts of business articles and stuff through the blog, like tons and tons of content on the blog. If they just want to get some business education for free, have them head over there and check that out.
Sean, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's fun.